Welcome to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast, where you get help and guidance through the chaos of parenting a child with anxiety or OCD. This show is for educational purposes and is not intended to replace the guidance of a qualified professional. Here's your host, child therapist, Natasha Daniels.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. I hope everything's going good for you. Today, I want to talk to you about you. I think that's an important thing to do. I like to support you and your mindset because we're on a journey raising our kids with anxiety and OCD. And our journey is separate from our kids. It's a unique journey and it comes with its own ups and downs. And today I want to talk to you about how to deal with the feelings of failure that a lot of us feel when our child's anxiety or OCD doesn't get better. But before we get started, a couple of announcements. I want to thank NoCD for sponsoring this episode. NoCD offers affordable, effective, convenient therapy, and luckily they're available in the US and outside the US. You can schedule your free 15-minute consultation to see if NoCD is a right fit for you and your child. Just go to treatmyocd.com. That is treatmyocd.com. I'll also leave a link in the show notes. Also, my Etsy store is up and running this month. Very excited to announce my mental health store, something totally different than what I'm normally used to. I have an OCD card deck, kind of like an affirmation deck, but for OCD. And instead of affirmations, it's about building skills, learning self-compassion, learning how to embrace the other people that are supporting you, and also working on your motivation and your ERP, exposure response prevention skills. And so there are 4 categories and there are 12 cards in each category. And it's designed for people to pull a card each day and do whatever the card says. Sometimes it's a thought to think about. A lot of times it's an action to do. And I do hope that that helps shift skill building. I hope it provides skills in between therapy sessions. If you're DIYing it and you're trying to help your child directly, I hope it's another tool in your toolbox to make it a little bit more fun and engaging and interactive. And I did create it for all ages. And so it's not a child deck per se. It's very age neutral. So adult with OCD can use this, a child with OCD. I would say no younger though than 7, because they do have to have a cognitive level of understanding the questions. But it can be used really for anybody. So check that out at natashadaniels.com/shop, which will link you right to my Etsy store. You'll also find a lot of mental health inspired t-shirts and sweatshirts and tote bags. These are designs that I partnered with my 13-year-old who has anxiety and OCD to design with me, kind of a family affair of spreading optimism and hope for people with mental health struggles. So check out those t-shirts and let me know what you think at natashadaniels.com/shop. Okay, let's get into today. So the reason why I wanted to do this topic is because I often feel like a failure. I was trying to think how to say that, but instead I just kind of said a long sentence and dragged it out. And there's things that will make me feel like a failure, and they might be different for you, but I feel like I have an extra layer of over responsibility because I am in this professional role. You know, I am a therapist, I have the skills, and then on top of that, I have this public persona and providing global resources to people all over the world. If I can't help my kids, then what does that say about me and my resources and what I do? So it goes deep. But I know that for a parent who's not a therapist, although there's a lot of parents who are therapists in my community, ironically, or not so ironically, they know that they need the support and they are savvy enough to get the support and the right help. But I know a lot of parents struggle with this feeling of feeling of failure. And I hear it all the time in the AT parenting community where parents feel this over responsibility for their child's journey with anxiety and OCD. This came up for me recently. I am batch recording this, so this is happening in November. You're going to be hearing this in December, so it's already passed. But there was this parent who was like trying to hound me and ask me, is my son cured, basically? Actually, I went and looked back at how she phrased it, because it was like, is he completely recovered? And for some reason, and I'm really trying to tap into, and this might be something good that you try too, I'm really trying to tap into my emotions when I get a strong response about something, like a defensiveness or an anger or even an anxiety feeling. I want to know more about that. And so this is he fully recovered question really bothered me. Now, partly it bothered me because it was posted on my private, well, it was not private, obviously, but on my personal profile on Facebook, which is really just for me to be me and not have my professional hat on. And it was asked on a post that was my son's birthday post. And so that added salt to the wound. Like, you're like coming on to my Facebook page, my Facebook profile, and asking this question about my child's mental health, like on his birthday post. It just seems really inappropriate to me. But that wasn't the whole thing that was bothering me, because they asked on YouTube and they were asking everywhere. They were trying to get me to answer this, and I didn't want to answer it. And I realized, why do I not want to answer this? And I felt like there was this accusation underneath it. Like, I can't listen to you if your child is not fully recovered. And I realized that it was hitting this fear, right? This fear of failure. If my child's not quote unquote fully recovered, and we'll talk about that language in a minute. If my child's not fully recovered, then I can't invest in your resources or your expertise because you're a failure. Now, obviously, this person did not say that. We read into things. We put our own smudges on the lens of how we view things, and our own insecurities bubble up to the surface and skew our perspective. But there's still information in how we perceive things. It says something about us and what we need to work on. And so I got to think about this, and I was like, why does that bother me to such a degree? First of all, on a general level, I don't like when people are looking for quote unquote recovery. I do feel like that is the wrong language. We recover from a cold. We recover from a broken arm. I don't know if we recover from asthma or recover from diabetes or recover from anxiety or OCD. I think that's the wrong word. We don't recover. We can overcome the struggles of anxiety or OCD. And now I'm getting into semantics, but it does make a difference to me because it's not a cold to cure. And partly when we view it as such, we do set ourselves up for failure because it's not, they had anxiety and OCD and now they do not. Just like they had asthma and now they don't. Or they had diabetes and now they don't. Well, if they're type 2, I don't know, maybe you can, you can argue that. Type 1, right? I'm not an endocrinologist, so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But with anxiety and OCD, especially a disorder, right? Not just an environmental stressor. We're talking about OCD. It's not something that's going to be cured. It's something that they can overcome and live a complete full life with. It also can be very cyclical. They can have bumps. They can do well for a while and then do really poorly for a while. And then they could do well for a while and then do really poorly for a while. Because it is a lifelong journey. It doesn't go away. It wasn't like, whew, that one chapter in my life when I had OCD. We want that for our kids. But they might be subclinical. They might not be having symptoms, but they're not recovered because that's not how it works. And so I think the word definitely rubbed me the wrong way in general. Even if someone said, when will my child recover from anxiety or OCD? I would get a frustrated feeling in my body, like, you're not getting it. Because the first part of being on the parent journey around raising a child with anxiety or OCD is acceptance and grief. Grief for what was and acceptance for what will be. And that acceptance means I'm accepting that there may be bumps in the road, for the rest of their life. And that might make you feel defensive. And you might be like, I'm not going to ever accept that. You don't have to, but that is the reality, that a lot of times people with anxiety or OCD have periods where they flare and they're having a harder time and periods where they're excelling, just like any other struggle. I think the other issue that rubbed me the wrong way is the connotation that I was reading between the lines, that if my child's not fully recovered, then who am I to teach those skills? And that got me into a deeper thought. I spent a lot of time thinking. I'm a deep thinker. I was like, this is how parents feel, right? They feel like, oh my gosh, my child is not getting better, and so I'm doing something wrong. And so they fly around like a butterfly, flitting from one thing to the next thing to the next thing because nothing is working for their child. When in reality, these are tough disorders. OCD in particular is immobilizing and very physiological. And so it may not be that everything you're doing is wrong. It just might be that your child's level of acuity is so severe that nothing will really make a dent in this moment, in this chapter. And that comes back full circle to the idea of, are you a failure when your child's anxiety or OCD isn't getting better? And I would argue that you're only one small piece of the puzzle. I say this ad nauseum. People in the AT parenting community, if you're listening, you're like, yes, she does. She says this ad nauseum. She says it almost every live class that we have every single week, because I really feel like that is part of what we need to hear as parents on this journey, that you can do all the right things. You could not feed the anxiety or OCD, not enable the compulsions, create a therapeutic home environment that is optimal. You have language, you're trying to communicate about the anxiety or OCD. You know when to push and when to pull back. You are getting them connected to the right resources. You are soaking up the right education. You're listening to this podcast, right? You're taking courses or, meeting with a therapist. Or maybe your child doesn't want to meet with a therapist, but you are doing all that you absolutely can. And it may not move the dial. Why? Because you're one small piece of the puzzle. Your child's physiological state is another piece. Your child's genetic predisposition to the acuity of anxiety and OCD is another. Your child's personality traits, whether they tend to be resilient or give up easily. I do feel like there's a genetic component to that. That you can't control. You can control how you cheerlead them and how you motivate them and how you try to build up their resilience, but you can't do this for them. And you can't spoon feed these resources and force them to use them, because that's their journey. And that's really, really hard as a parent when you just want to take this pain away, you want to take this struggle away, and everything that you're doing is falling flat. Or your child does really, really well for a while and it feels good because we take the accolades too. I was trying to think of the right word. Like when our kids are doing really well, I don't know about you, but I'm like, I'm knocking it out of the park. I'm not too shy to give myself a pat on the back. I'm like, look at me. I'm doing great. My kids are doing fantastic. And then when they're failing, I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done wrong? Why are they failing? I'm a horrible parent. The truth is, it's not our journey. It's not our pass or fail. Sometimes our kids are going to struggle and sometimes they aren't. Yes, are there things that we can do to optimize their success? Absolutely. But there are parents that I've worked with, especially in the AT parenting community, who I am talking to on a daily basis. They are in our weekly classes. They are in our monthly support group calls. I'm seeing their kids in our support group calls. Or maybe I'm not, because they're not willing to show up. And I know this is a parent who's doing all the right things. I know this because they're messaging me in the forums and they're like, Natasha, I'm doing this, this, and this. And I'm like, that's exactly what I would do. And it's landing flat. Their child is still struggling. That is a part they can't control. Is that a failure on the parent? No. Just like the success isn't 100% ours either. I mean, I would like to take full credit, but honestly, I can't, because that's my child working, or choosing to work or choosing not to work. whatever chapter we're in. And sometimes they want to really, work on their skills and really want to tackle things, and sometimes they don't. So when we blame ourselves and take 100% of the burden, it's not healthy for us, and it's actually not healthy for our kids, because we're actually taking their agency away on some level, where we're like, they have no part to play in this journey of theirs. It's my journey. They're just in it. They're in my lane. And when they succeed, it's my win. When they fail, it's my loss. And that's not accurate. And when we foster independence and we encourage them to have their own agency, that you are in charge of your anxiety or OCD, and what you do will control your future. And I'm here to support you. I'm here to coach you. I'm here to do whatever you feel like will help. I'm not here to enable the anxiety and OCD. I'm here to support you. Then that is our role, and that is our success. And so sometimes we're not doing all that we can for our kids' anxiety and OCD, and that is true. It's still not our full failure, because we're only one piece of the puzzle. But that is what I teach. That's what I teach in the AT parenting community. It's what I teach in my courses. It's what I try to teach you, is think of it as 2 lanes. Your child's on a journey. They have their road, and that is their long-term journey with anxiety and OCD. That's going to far outlive you, to be honest, hopefully, right? They're going to be dealing with this way after they leave your house. And I know that can be a depressing thought, but they might be like, I have anxiety, but I feel like anxiety doesn't have me. Yes, do I have an anxiety disorder? Yeah, I will always have an anxiety disorder. But does it have me? No, I'm living a full life right now. I am facing my fears. I am sitting in discomfort. I'm doing all the things. It's not holding me back very much at all. But that doesn't mean that next year something can't knock me off my feet, get me on my knees, and my progress is lost, and I have to deal with that. But my skills are always there.
It's time we put help directly in our kids' hands. Introducing Crushing OCD course for kids and teens.
It was way more helpful than all the other therapy we've ever done, because we didn't really know what to do. So we weren't really doing it before. So the course helped to figure out what the exposures are and how to do them.
We're not in therapy and find it really hard to find an ERP trained therapist here. So we're currently with the public health service, but again, they don't seem to be trained in ERP. It's filled that gap that we don't have, that was needed.
This was really well timed for us to use between therapists and to help us get off to a good start with this new practice.
It was easy to use. I was able to do it from my phone or also on the computer.
There's different ages, so there were younger kids, there were teenagers, and so that was really nice too, to have a variety of ages where it wasn't just geared towards younger kids or older kids. It was a nice variety.
It's helpful for our kids to hear it from this third party as opposed to just us saying it.
I really like the offense and defense method. I love working on poking at OCD while it's sleeping. It makes it a little bit easier to do, and it's kind of fun. I'm planning on using it to work on my fear of holding or touching batteries and stuff like that.
So it was really helpful, and I think a lot of other kids would like it. I thought that I was the only one who had worrying about the weather and stuff. And then there was somebody else on there who worried about the same thing, which was really helpful.
Seems less scary to work on stuff now that I've watched this class, and I'm more interested to work on it.
I like trying to do more exposures still, and before I wasn't, I just didn't want to do them.
I've worked on some of my bigger compulsions and been successful.
I realized that it was helpful to do the exposures. Before it was really, really hard. It's still hard, but it's helpful to know that I need to do them.
Before there would be a lot of battles about it, so it is definitely less loggerheads.
Really, really good course and super helpful.
Definitely would recommend this. It's really easy to follow. It's nice bite-sized videos. I really like the worksheets that go along with it, and I think it's really helpful.
To learn more about this course and register your child or teen, go to atparentingsurvivalschool.com.
And that is the same thing for our kids. Their skills will be there as they build them, and we don't get to control how quickly or how effectively they want to build their skills. It's like, we can bring them to water, but we can't force them to drink. It's the same thing. And so understanding that they're in their lane and you are in your lane. Now, your journey is different than your child's. We have to learn we have to first grieve of what will not be and what is, that there's a grief process in there. And it's important to recognize and honor that. I'm going to grieve for what I want it to be. And then there's this let go, this acceptance of I'm letting go and I'm accepting what is. And then I'm like pivoting and I'm like, what is my role? What do I need to do in order to raise this human being who has this disorder or these disorders? What do they need from their parent? Do they need me to feel guilt and overwhelm and fear of failure? They really don't need that. Sometimes I can't control it, but that's not what they need. What do they need? They need someone who is anchored. I am going to do a whole free series on how to anchor yourself. I'm super excited about it because I think that is at the heart of the parent journey, is how do I lovingly detach and anchor myself so I am fully grounded and anchored to support my child and not bobbing around with my own struggles. Stay tuned. That is coming out in February. But my role as the parent, what my child needs is for me to be anchored, which is really hard to do. That's a daily practice. And for me to coach them and to follow their pace. And so when their pace is slow, I have to match their pace. Does that mean that I enable the anxiety and OCD by being part of compulsions or encouraging avoidance when it comes to anxiety? No, I'm not going to be complicit with anxiety and OCD and foster unhealthy coping skills. I'm also not going to push them off the cliff so they just land on the bottom. It's this really, really big daily struggle of finding that sweet spot of getting near the cliff, right? And not feeding the anxiety and OCD. My role is to coach them. And maybe they don't want me to talk about it. I have to respect that. I'm not going to force them to talk about it, but then I have to say, what behaviors am I doing? So I don't want to foster or grow the compulsions by being part of it. So maybe I do Ellie Leibowitz's SPACE program, which systematically pulls back my involvement in partnering with anxiety and OCD. But that is our role, right? That's our journey. And I also think the other journey with us being a parent is not beating ourselves up, of having some grace for ourselves and leaning into self-compassion to recognize that you're going to have human moments where you don't show up in the way that you want to show up, or you're going to get frustrated, or you're going to enable anxiety or OCD because you just got to get to school, or you just got to get to work, or you just need to go to sleep. It will be an imperfect journey, but I do feel like that is part of our journey, is learning that self-compassion, learning that forgiveness, recognizing that every day is a new day, and that your child's failure, which I don't even like that word, your child's struggle with anxiety or OCD, or overcoming anxiety and OCD, not recovery, but you overcome in the moment, has more to do with the whole puzzle piece, the whole puzzle, and you're only one piece. I was like, what am I trying to say? And so we can't own our child's failures. I know with my father growing up, he had bipolar. Eventually, after my mom passed away, he had bipolar with psychosis. And he was given every opportunity, every medication, every therapy, even electroconvulsive therapy, ECT. He was in many studies. He was in a study in Columbia University twice, I believe. He was in multiple inpatient psychiatric hospitals, some of the best. And he never got better. He never got better. And that wasn't because my mom didn't try. It wasn't because he wasn't given all the resources and all the support. His journey was just to have this mental health struggle. Now, I don't want that for my kids. And that's very triggering to think, oh my gosh, what if my kids have a similar journey? I don't want that. But I also have to let go of the fact that I don't control that. I control right now. And I can show up as best as I possibly can and love and accept him for where he is, or where they are. I have multiple kids with multiple issues. And that I'm going to do all that I can in my power to prevent history from repeating itself. But I also recognize that there's a lot of stuff I don't get to control, and that it's not fully on me. It's not my pass or fail. It's, okay, my job is to show up and be there 100% for my child. And their journey is to take them where it's going to take them. And I don't have control over that, which is so scary. And so to go back to the beginning part of this episode, is my son fully recovered? The answer is absolutely not. He is not. We're in a chapter, a season in our lives. I like to say that apparently. I've said chapter a lot lately. I kind of like to look at life like a book. It really does help me. And I think that there are chapters, and there are good chapters and bad chapters, or there's a good part in a chapter, and people come in and out of our lives in different chapters. I don't know. I like that analogy. But we're in a bumpy chapter. And when I look at that and I say, is that my failure as a mom, as a therapist, as an anxiety and OCD therapist? No. What would he look like if he had a different parent? What would he look like? And maybe ask yourself this as well about your child. What if your child had a different parent who never learned about anxiety or OCD, or never got them the right skills, or never soaked up the right education, or kept feeding it, or ignored it? How much worse would they be? And I think about that a lot because I see where we are at. It's not crisis. Could it be better? Yeah, it could definitely be better. Is it, are we in absolute life crisis? No, we're all living, we're having a good life, But could it be worse if he had a different parent? What if this is optimal and it would have been far, far, far worse if he didn't have someone with my expertise coaching him and getting him into therapy and getting him into groups and doing all the things I've been doing, right? That actually makes me think about that, right? And so I hope that today's episode was just kind of this like mindset shift for you, to remind you, one, that I have these feelings too, and that it's normal. This feeling of failure and this feeling of feeling like we're not doing enough or we're not doing it right is a parental experience on this journey. And I think most of us have that at least some of the time. I am also confident, especially as of late, as I've been processing this, is I am doing absolutely everything I possibly can, in particular for my son, who's currently the front burner issue. And that is all I can do. That is all I can do. And there comes a time where we have to say to ourselves, especially for those of you that have been on this journey for a long time, I have done absolutely everything I can. The rest is out of my control. I'll continue to show up and do what I can, but I let go of control because I recognize that the rest is out of my control. That our kids are born and are put on a journey, and we're not the one driving. They have their own trajectory and their own path that they're going, and we only play a small role in that, believe it or not. If you look at their lifetime, we only play a small role. So you might be knocking it out of the park, but you're getting no accolades. You're getting no, yay, you're doing so great. And that feels really horrible. And I get that. But I want you to know that you're not alone, and that sometimes we do everything we can and our kids still struggle. And you might be doing great right now, and then you may not be able to prevent a relapse or a bump down the road. And then they get back up again, and sometimes they do phenomenal again. And that is also their temperament, whether they're resilient or they lay down and they go, I can't do it, right? And we can only impact that to some degree. I'm trying to instill this I've got grit kind of personality, but I have 3 kids, and some of them have that grit and some of them do not. And I really do believe that's a little bit biological. We can try to foster a different level of resiliency, but we're working with what we're working with, and not everyone has that in their personality. So I see you and I see myself, and there is no pass or fail. This is a journey. There's no end. There's no, finish line. I'm sorry, but there isn't. There's no recovery. I don't like that word. I think we can overcome our struggles. I like that word because it doesn't mean that it's gone. It means that we're overcoming the struggles. We're living a fruitful, full life. And that's really the aim for all of us. I just want my kids to be happy. And part of that is accepting that what that looks like may be different. I don't know. I wanted all my kids to have like a traditional high school experience, and be in the band and the marching band and, have a bunch of friends and, develop your own self-identity. And for my son, that's not happening. He's not in online school and, it's not traditional. And I have to learn, I can grieve, but then I have to learn to accept that what I envision is just that. It's my own envisioning. It's not reality. And there is this level of acceptance of, I will love and support my kids wherever they're at throughout their journey, because that's my role as a parent. And that's your role as a parent, right? To love and accept them wherever they're at, because we don't get to control where they're at. So I hope that you're finding my podcast helpful in general. Don't forget to hit a star and review it if you're enjoying it. I do like to read a review if I see one to show my gratitude. And I want to thank Kaladu, who wrote Amazing Free Resource for Parents. Natasha Daniels is a wealth of information. I've listened to her podcast for quite a few years now, and I always learn something new in each episode. I love that Natasha has firsthand experience and generously shares that along with her professional expertise. Highly recommend. Well, I appreciate that. Thanks so much for taking the time to write that. And sometimes it's sharing my fails, or my humanness. And a part of that is to normalize the struggle of raising kids with anxiety or OCD, that it's not this clear cut, you're doing everything right and now your child is prospering. And I think that's partly why I am really vulnerable on this podcast in general, and this episode, to share that with you, a little peek behind the curtains from someone who's clinically well-versed, but also is a mom in the trenches with you. So I hope that you find the sparkle in everything you do. Hey, don't forget to check out natashadaniels.com/shop. I hope that you like my OCD cards and our t-shirts and sweatshirts that my daughter and I created for you. And I will be back next Tuesday to talk more. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the AT Parenting Survival Podcast. To get additional support raising a child with anxiety or OCD, visit Natasha's online school of on-demand classes at atparentingsurvivalschool.com.